like to open the Town of Ayer Select Board meeting for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. This meeting/hearing of the Ayer Select Board will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote participation or attendance via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with a particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID number 978-772-8220 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just like to ask for those people that are on Zoom, while we get through some of these technical issues, if you can please wait until you're called upon before you start speaking. Any changes to the agenda, Mr. Pompriano?
Mr. Chairman, the application for change of manager, respectfully asking that the board table that to the February 18th meeting. And also the Department of Public Works report for the contract for the Clearwell, also table to February 18th.
Okay. Any other changes?
I have none.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Agenda's approved. Any announcements this evening? Okay, moving on. First up is public input. Is there anybody here or online for public input? Yes, please come up and just state your name and address.
My name is Kim Can Waterhouse.
You can go ahead. Yeah,
Oh.
go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I live at 18 Pond Street, and thank you. I want to talk about the Air Center that we're building in Ayer. We really do need this center. I know that you guys are working really hard on it, but we really do need this center. I'm one of the one that goes to Katie's center every day, have lunch. I talk with Mary Ellen, who's one of the social workers. Sam, the driver, always takes me to places where I need to go to. So the Air Center would really benefit a lot of us who live at 18 Pond Street. Because not only do I go, but there are others who go there as well. So this Air Center would benefit us all at the Pond Street address.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or public input? Anything online, Carly?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Not seeing or hearing any. Next up is the joint meeting with the Finance Committee. I'll turn it over to the Finance Committee to call to order.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Freskowski. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee, and we'll call the Finance Committee to order. And in attendance is myself, Kurt Freskowski, the chair, Eric Seckman, the clerk, Jin Hong, member, and by Zoom, he's waiting to get into the Zoom call, Bob France. So we have those four members of the Finance Committee with us this evening.
I don't see him. He's not in the queue yet, waiting.
Yeah, he says, I just have it joining via Zoom, waiting for host.
Oh, he's not. Is he Chris's iPad? There's a couple I don't recognize, but I don't have anyone waiting.
No, that's me, Carly. Chris
Oh.
Prell, sorry.
Oh, Chris Prell, okay.
Yep.
He may be calling in on the other number,
Okay.
the old number. So, well, we'll wait for Bob, but having said that, we still have myself, Jen, Eric, which is a forum for our group. So
Okay, perfect. All right, great, thank you. All right, and I'd like to invite up members for the presentation of the fiscal year 26 Ayer Regional School District budget. Dr. Redmond? Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. So we're thrilled to be here today, this year and to present the fiscal year 26 budget. Feels like we were here yesterday doing this for 25. Mr. Plunkett, our Director of Finance, will be doing most of the driving through this presentation, but myself and our Assistant Superintendent, Charlie Cleary, will be here to fill in some spaces and answer some questions at the end. So I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it. We have the first slide here for our preliminary presentation for the FY26 budget is a shot of the FY25 current budget on account roll-ups. If you take all of our accounts and roll them up as far as you go to the top level, almost 70% of all of our accounts are salaries and fringe benefits. There's 31% for other expense, supplies, and services, but you can see that salaries are definitely our main driver. Going on to the next slide. This is the preliminary cherry sheet estimates, and the second column, the column in the middle, is the governor's H1 budget, which came out the end of January. We have the first few rows are our receipts that we get from the state. As far as Chapter 70, we're getting almost 8.9 million. That's a change this year. We've been a minimum aid district since we've been a region in 2011, and we get whatever the minimum is. It's a hold harmless status, and last year that was $30 a student. So for 1,700 students, that was about $40,000. This year, Chapter 70 is $283,000 more than we budgeted last year. So that is a significant increase, and it has to do with our foundation budget and the required local contribution. But in the top half of the estimated receipts, we are about $380,000 more than we were last year. And then we added some of the charges for choice out and charter out, and we come down to about $350,000 in more revenues than we budgeted last year. Remember, these are estimates, and we have to go through about 3 or 4 more steps through the budget process before it's finalized. Budget drivers, the top section is that revenue we just talked about. I did plug in the governor's H1 Chapter 70. The other ones, I was a little bit more conservative. I took our actuals from FY24 and tweaked those a little bit. I think it's a little bit safer to go conservative on the revenues, so I did lower that a little bit for charter reimbursement and Medicaid. So if you take that, the drivers in the middle section, of course, there's salaries, health insurance, transportation, out-of-district tuitions are always our big drivers. There's only a handful of them now. The McKinney-Vento, we're looking to put $20,000 back in that because of the shelter students that we received. A lot of them have come from other areas or districts in the state, and they are allowed to go back to their LEA of choice. And so we're doing a lot of cost shares with some other districts, Boston, Lowell, Worcester. We're sending kids, we're helping them with a 50% cost split on those transportation setups. The last section at the bottom is two of our big revolving funds that we used in the budget. For choice, we're right about even, 100 students going out and 100 students coming in. So we have $550,000 scheduled for choice, and then circuit breaker, which is for special education expenditures, is down a little bit, so we budgeted a little bit less at $886,000. This is the Chapter 70 summary, and two things I want to draw your attention to are on the upper right, the enrollment. You can see we've gone up 61 students for our foundation enrollment. That means everybody that we're responsible for in the towns of Ayer and Shirley. So that enrollment factors directly into the foundation budget, which is the second line for FY26. We're up over 25 million. It's a $1.9 million increase over the prior year, which is significant. And the third row is the required local contribution, and that is up 1.3 million over last year. So that's the state is increasing the foundation budget to where they think that we as a district should be for educating our students. So they move this up. They're moving it up on a kind of scheduled setup, and that's a significant increase for us this year. And so our Chapter 70 had to go up. So Chapter 70 was significantly higher. On the left side, you can see the minimum aid calculation. We always used to be in that minimum aid where we would get the whatever was set in the budget. This year, the governor has set $75 per student as the minimum level of aid, and we would have had 131,000 as opposed to the 283 compared to what we budgeted last year. So we're in good shape as far as the Chapter 70 funding, which is good news. And this is just a quick look at our foundation enrollment. The total is 1,759, an increase of 61 students. And over way to the right, you see the 1.3 million. Now that's a portion to Ayer and Shirley based on the percentage of that 16,000,009 figure. So Ayer has an increase of almost 900,000, and Shirley has an increase of 402,000 for the required local contribution. Those also include an increment that the state forces onto districts and towns to get them up to the target that they have for the foundation budget. So there is a $200,000 target increment for Ayer and a $60,000 target increment for Shirley added into that. Now Ayer belongs to two districts, Ayer Shirley and Neshoba Tech. So the bottom section of the columns in the middle show the 1,040 students for Ayer Shirley and the calculation of the required local contribution and the increase of just about 900,000. For Neshoba Tech, they're down 8 students. Hopefully they're coming to Ayer Shirley. But that's a decrease in cost of 121,000. So between the two that Ayer has to contribute to, it's an increase of 778,000. And this is all the required local contributions set by the state. So the totals page, I added, I did give out some of the extra copies of it because it didn't show up in the slides in the deck, the PDF. But the totals have our last our fiscal year 24 and 25. And FY26 is compared to FY25 with a change column showing you the dollar amounts that have changed in the percentage. And we have a 2.9% increase to our general fund operating expenses. There's also a slight increase in transportation. We've seen a rise in costs for special ed transportation. For regular transportation, we're under contract with D, so we're in one of our incremental or our additional years of the contract where it's based on the CPI index for the current year. So we budgeted a 5.2% increase there for regular transportation. The next section is revenue, and all the revenue, the 9.6 million in revenue gets subtracted from our operating total, which is all of our expenditures plus transportation and debt, and that is the assessment. And the next rows down in the middle is 24 million. I know it's hard to see. It's 24 million with the debt, 966, 298. When you add all the funds together, we have our revolving funds and our grants, all funds all together, we have an increase of 1.4% over last year. Now, looking at the assessment, we have the first row, row number 1, has the required local contribution inserted there from the state. The rows 2 and 3, net school spending above RLC and transportation are allocated to the 2 towns based on the regional agreement, and the current allocation amounts are 57.5% for Ayer and 42.5% for Shirley. So transportation and the spending above RLC plus the debt are assessed to the towns. Those pieces are the only pieces that are assessed. And you can see here we have a 5.7% increase for Ayer in the operating expenditures, and then a 6.7% when you add in the debt. One note on the debt is that the CPA money that was allocated to be used to lower the debt for Ayer residents for the taxes has been used up. FY24 and FY25 we used $150,000 the first 2 years that we had the field project debt. So Ayer is seeing a little bit of a bump on the debt expenditure assessment because of that CPA. It's not lowering that piece of the assessment.
The other increase would be the incremental increase for meeting target from the state. That's at $200,000.
Right. And the last slide shows you the 74% is the required local contribution. That's what gets set by the state. And then the transportation and net school spending, 26%. And that goes into the assessment along with the debt, which rounds out the total assessment. But it's just those 3 pieces that get assessed to the towns.
Now, I know that 6.7 is a fairly high number, and we would love to be able to come in lower than that. But I think it's important to remember last year, I believe it was 6.3, 6.2?
6%.
Is that 6%?
Yeah.
We got to 6% after using $350,000 in E&D money. This reflects no use of E&D money. And we're trending in the right direction with funding from the state and where we're able to supplement with grant writing. Since we've hired our grant writer last year, I think I reported out that he got about $1 million in competitive grants. We have to be close, if not above, $1.5 million at this point. We recently received a COPS grant for school safety at $230,000 to do some infrastructure improvements in all of the schools. Some video cameras, bollards, key card doors, some lighting. So we will continue to try to supplement where we can with competitive grants and work with the town manager to make this number as reasonable as possible. But we're in much better shape this year fiscally than last, though that number is similar to where it was last year. The other thing that I would probably add is the required local contribution is almost just under 900,000, 899,000 for Ayer.
Yes.
And what with the assessments we're asking for 960, so we're really about 61,000, only 61,000 above what the required local contribution is.
Right. 900.
Yeah.
Now 899 is a big piece of it.
Any questions from board members?
At the moment.
Okay, Finance Committee? Any questions?
Not at this time.
Any questions for anybody in the audience or online? No. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What is the current money that's in school choice revolving account? Do you have that number by chance?
I do. It was down to 0 at the end of FY '24. So
Okay.
we have 500,000, in there for this year. 550,000 for FY '26.
All right. Thank you very much.
And we're funding how many positions out of that?
I believe it's 7.
7, so, which is
7
what?
teaching positions.
And were those positions that got carried over from the ESSER grants?
That was separate. We brought the positions from
Okay.
ESSER over, we funded that in the general fund.
Okay.
We
Thank
had-
you very much, gentlemen.
You're welcome. We
You're
had talked
welcome, Chris.
about last year, and one of the things that we're trying to do over the next 5 years is move as many positions out of revolving accounts, school choice, ESSER when we had it, into the general fund. It's the only way to make sure that they're safe. And it is more solid budgeting practice.
Thank you.
There's no other hands.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I was going to give an update on the statement of interest. I'll be very brief. It's very similar to what I did in 2023 when we did submit a statement of interest. And the reason I'm back is because we were not accepted into the pipeline, which is fairly typical. Many school districts have to submit several times before they're accepted, and hopefully this is our plan and your plan for us. The statement of interest is the first step to receive funding for a building project from the Massachusetts Building Authority. What they ask us to do is essentially identify the deficiencies in the building and how that correlates with Mass General Law 70B. It has to match those priorities, which Page Hilltop's deficiencies absolutely match up with why we would need a new building. In this case, because we're a regional district, that would be submitted by me with approval from the school committee. But ultimately, we're looking for approval from the select board, or at least the willingness to fund it. Because the last thing that we would want to do is submit a statement of interest, be accepted into the pipeline, and then have to decline because the funding isn't there. So I did bring a handout. Does everybody have it? Because there'll be some interesting numbers on there. If we are lucky enough,
Oh, they're buried.
I'll use my old teaching skills. Take one and pass it along, please. Thank you.
Realize this was part of the packet.
If we are invited into the eligibility period, that would last up to 270 days. There was certainly a lot of hoops we would have to jump through. They will look for the initial compliance of the completion of the statement of interest. We would be forced to form a building committee, which is perfectly normal. They would look at all of our documents and enrollment certification. And then we would need to localize, have funding authorized for a feasibility study. The last feasibility study that Ayer Shirley went through was for the high school, and that was at a cost of $750,000. What I did is there were 3 local districts that have completed building projects, or actually 2 that have completed, 1 in Fitchburg who will have a completed project in June. The cost of those range from $53,600,000 to $76 million, but the reimbursement's pretty close. Harvard was at just over 50%. Groton was at 53.39%, and Fitchburg was at 55%. And so the reason that I am bringing this up tonight and letting the select board know is we're just doing our due diligence, and we're asking whether tonight or at a future select board meeting if Ayer is still financially able to support a new building project at this time.
2 questions. One to Robert, for the feasibility study, if they were to come back, tomorrow and say, okay, you know, the states approve them, this is how much a feasibility study, we'd be able to use UDAG?
Well, I mean, the UDAG is unrestricted under the select board.
Right,
it-
so, but I mean, that
there
would
could
be a,
There could be one,
right, because that would be something that we could do in between like a town meeting if we had to,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
My second question would be, would it be in our interest to have an article to say, hey, you know, we're anticipating getting approval, would town meeting authorize, like, I'll just use easy numbers, 200,000 out of free cash? To be put aside, you know, to be put aside, so that if we get the,
I didn't ask the,
if we get the approval, then we've at least, you know, pocketed
Yep.
a little bit of money, so.
If I may, another option would be, it could be added to the assessment of the town.
Okay. Those are my initial questions.
Any other questions?
Question? So you have the comparisons from local towns. Do you know what the comparative enrollment for each of those elementary schools would be compared to Pageant?
We are larger than the Groton and the Harvard School, and we are a little bit smaller than the school in Pittsburgh. The school in Pittsburgh is going to house about 700 kids. Page Hilltop right now is around 600. I believe the Groton School is about 5, and Harvard, I believe, is smaller than that. I don't have the exact number. These projects, though, you know, are older. The Harvard and Groton project and the Fitchburg project. I happened to write the educational plan for that, so I have a little bit more knowledge. That project was originally around $60 million, and it quickly rose to 75. And this was, much of this was before what we're seeing for inflation. So I would suspect that it would be more expensive than those numbers. I would look at a range between 75 and 100 million, in all honesty, for a project right now. It's a big number.
Any other questions?
Mr.
Crawford?
Chair, just real quick, in terms of timeline, Dr. Renda, so you would submit this letter of interest. At what point would the feasibility study and the funding for that need to be kicked in?
If we're accepted into the pipeline this year,
Yeah,
we would be asked to allocate that money, I believe, sometime in October or November of next year.
of 2026?
2025 going into 2026. But the project itself, if we're accepted in May, it's going to take anywhere from 5 to 7 years for completion.
And that starts from the feasibility study, the 5 to 7 years?
It could. The feasibility study, depending on what it says, that could actually push that timeline further. So there's all, when I talk to people about a new building project often, because many people want it, there is a thought that it could go behind the current Page Hilltop. That's a possibility. There's a lot of ledge back there. I think we know some of this information from the senior center, kind of holes that they dug for the potential of part of that land being a site for the senior center. So it could work out, but they could look at that land very quickly and determine that that's not a place that we could build the school. Or if they could.
So the irony is, where the school is now, we could then be told not to put a school there?
While behind it.
Oh, okay.
We could absolutely do a renovation and an addition building up where we currently are now. But that presents a whole different set of.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Way to house 500 kids while that's happening, but.
Yeah.
Districts do it all the time, and if that's something we have to do, we'll figure it out.
what's the trend, I don't know, probably in the last 10 years, year over year for student enrollment? I mean, is it going up at a steady rate, or is it?
I couldn't tell you the last 10 years, but in the last 4 years, we are growing. We are up about 150 kids the last 4 years. When
Yeah,
I
it's
started, we were about
Steadily going up.
1,600, maybe like 1,615. And we're just about 1,800 kids now with our students around our district. that fluctuates too. Like kids move and come in, but that's fairly steady growth.
Thank you.
For the foundation enrollment of the last 5 years, we had 1,642 in FY '22, 1,658 in '23, 1,712 in FY '24, and 1,698 in FY '25.
1698.
And we broke 1,700 for this FY '26. Is that 1,759?
1759.
And that's on the back page of the budget is the foundation enrollment, the 5-year rolling average that we do for the allocations.
Okay, that's where we're projected.
Distributed, or is it like grows more in the Patriot part than the middle school, high school part?
The growth has been mostly in Ayer. So this last year, Ayer has gained 61 students, and Shirley's down 9.
Yeah, but that's
8.
the high school part? Or
That's both.
Overall.
That would be high school.
Any other questions? Yes, just state your name. Come up if you want.
Jim Quigley, I'm on the regional school committee, just as we start to lay out some of the things that could happen if you tilt up area. Remember, in the back pocket, you have the same card that we have over in Shirley's, that in about 12 years, something will happen with Evans, right? And how you figure that into growth, what will happen there, what that turns out. As you enter this building cycle, that could be kind of a wild card that could just show up. We don't have any more answers than you have on this side of the river, so keep that in your thoughts as we start to move forward on any of these type of build projects, because these have obviously build a school, you like to be in a place where you say, all right, we're all done with that for the next 50 years, let somebody else deal with that, but that could really change the ground that we're playing on.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very true.
Okay. Any other questions? Great, thank you. And
Thank you
I
for
think
your
we'll
time.
put this on a.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's any questions that come up, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to get back.
Great,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda is going to be the discussion on the role of the buy board in the fiscal year '26 budget process.
Mr. Chairman, I went before the Finance Committee at one of their previous meetings with sort of this proposal, and I believe I've mentioned it to the Select Board in the past, but I figured when everybody's here in a joint meeting, it'd be a good opportunity to just get some direction. What we're proposing is, obviously, the buy board will remain on the books. It consists of the chair of the Select Board, the chair and vice chair of the Finance Committee, myself, the assistant town manager, finance manager, town accountant. And the whole purpose of the buy board was really it's only advisory in nature, has no authority, would to be to look at, specific, financial issues, aspects of the budget and so forth. The most recent project that we successfully did was the review and update of the financial policies last year, when that was completed. What we'd like to propose for this budget cycle for FY '26, and I just want to be clear, we're not dissolving the buy board, but where the Finance Committee is very active on the budget, as is the Select Board, and town departments are interfacing on a regular basis with the Select Board and the Finance Committee. For a matter of efficiencies, I think the last thing anybody wants is another meeting, and I know that the FinCom is populated also on all of the subcommittees, whether it's capital, rate review, and so forth. So what I mentioned to the FinCom was going to propose for the FY26 budget process that we use the, as we have in the past, the select board meetings and the finance committee meetings for matters of the budget, and try it for one cycle and have the buy board meetings sort of on hold, and then when there's another major project or major issue, we could reconvene it. So we're just looking at an efficiency issue, but it's up to the select board and the FinCom how you want to proceed. So that's what I just wanted to raise for this evening.
Okay.
So for example, on Thursday, February 6th, myself and the finance manager will be going to the FinCom to do a deep dive on draft 1 of the budget, as well as to discuss a proposal on the recommended uses for free cash, which that memo will go to the FinCom and to the select board, and we can discuss this here. That's something like the buy board would discuss, previously, but we're going to cover that at both committees as an example. So I don't want to belabor the point, but we thought where the FinCom and the select board were together tonight, what the will of the town is to proceed. If we take a pause on buy board and just try it for this cycle and then reconvene as needed, or we can continue with the current model.
Any thoughts or questions from select board?
My thought on meetings are not to have meetings just to have meetings. So it being pitched as a efficiency, plan, that sounds great with me. And the biggest thing is it's not dissolved. It's
Right.
just not meeting. So yeah, there's nothing worse than sitting through a meeting when you've already kind of have talked these things out and hashed these things out. That's my thought.
I agree. It's, I think it's not as needed as it used to be, so, yeah, I think it makes sense to just hit pause.
Thoughts or comments from the finance committee?
I'm going to make 2 observations. The financial policies review, when would be the next time that needs to be done? Is that on a 3-year cycle?
Every 2 years. So we get,
Okay.
so in 2027.
Okay, all right, so that's for 2027, we would need to be doing the financial review. So theoretically, we should look at, because of that being, financial policies being something over, look over everything, we could look at doing it, bringing it back for 2027, okay. And then the second thing is that, so we have a joint meeting tonight, and then in March, we'll have one more joint meeting of the select board and FinCom on the final warrant. So, again, what I'm just addressing there is the idea, are we communicating enough? And with that, tonight, I think we are, and my feeling is that we can put the buy board on pause for this year. Now, I don't know if my members have any other comments.
I would echo the sentiments already expressed.
All right, great. Yeah, and I agree.
Perfect. Mr. Chair, I don't think, we don't need a formal vote, but it's good that there's consensus, so we'll try it. And as the chair from FinCom mentioned too, we can always call a joint meeting or activate the buy board on any issue, and we'll reassess next cycle.
All right.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our joint meeting. If you want to go ahead and adjourn the finance committee.
Make a motion for the finance committee to adjourn.
Second the motion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The finance committee, part of this meeting is adjourned.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Next up on the agenda is our town manager's report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Select Board, good evening. On the administrative update, and you have in the packet the warrants that were reviewed and approved since the Select Board last met. Just a few items on the administrative update, which I'll sort of combined with the budget update, item 1 and 2. The Economic Development Manager position has been posted. So we're actively advertising for that position, and we'll keep the board updated as we move through that process, and hopefully very soon we'll be bringing a candidate before the board for ratification of an appointment. As I mentioned to the Capital Planning Committee a couple meetings ago, and Selectman Tavares is aware, we may need to reconvene the Capital Planning Committee. We generally always try to avoid any mid-year or mid-process capital requests, but the new IT coordinator, we have some town computers with the new Windows upgrade that's going to happen in October. There are some computers that will not be able to do the upload. These are older, obviously, computers, and we want to be proactive and get that in place. And so we're looking at a proposal potentially for capital to review and make a recommendation on where we would use a small portion of capital stabilization, subject to town meeting approval, to upgrade those computers. And then moving forward, the IT coordinator will have built in, which we used to have as part of capital moving forward every year, every other year, where we're updating some of these computers. There seemed to have been a breakdown on that since the pandemic. So more to come on that front, but just sort of an FYI on that. With respect to the budget, as I sent to the select board last Friday, the Neshoba Valley Technical High School had their annual budget breakfast, which I did attend. The students always do an excellent job. You have the FY26 assessment for Neshoba Valley Tech will be $936,772, which is actually a 12% decrease from last year because we have some fewer students, as mentioned earlier, going this year. I did send you the presentation, as I did send it also to the FinCom, and it will be posted on the FY26 budget page. Dr. Pigeon, who I did see, is prepared to make a presentation on the budget at town meeting, but she is happy to come to any select board meeting or any FinCom meeting if needed, or any questions, through the process. So something to consider. As I already mentioned, I'm going to the Finance Committee this Thursday to go over draft 1 of the budget in detail, and to start the discussion regarding the recommended uses for this year's free cash. And I'll have a memo on that, which will be going to the FinCom. We'll post it, and it'll also be going to the Select Board to start that discussion. We are in the process of finalizing various contract negotiations, both union contracts and personnel service contracts. Everything is relatively on schedule per the budget calendar, which is good. That's really one of the major pieces in the budget that still has yet to be fully implemented in there, so we will keep the board updated on that front. The target per the budget calendar is to have what we'll call draft 2 of the budget to the Select Board and the FinCom for February 18th. And also we're looking to come to the Select Board on February 18th with the non-union COLA recommendation to the board. And then, as mentioned, the Public Budget Forum will be on Wednesday, March 12th at 6 p.m. per the budget calendar. It's a joint meeting of the Select Board and FinCom with all town departments here, and an opportunity for the public's input and questions at that forum. So that's sort of a budget snapshot, but everything is moving on schedule as we move forward. Briefly on the annual town meeting warrant sort of development update, it's still early, but the warrant closes on March 28th at noon. That's the deadline also for citizens petitions. Select Board is scheduled to finalize and approve the warrant on April 1st. And I will have an update for February 18th meeting of the Select Board, which I will also send to the Finance Committee on the development of the warrant. It's looking to be pretty standard, no major surprises, but I'll have an update on any new potential articles. And as always, if there's any questions on the budget, we've really started to populate the FY26 budget page on the website that has all of the major documents. Also, hard copies are available from my office during normal business hours when we want everybody to have all of the information and are available for any questions. The last, if there are no questions on that, the last item I have is number 3 is the Neshoba Valley Medical Center update since the select board last met. So as the board is probably aware, but I want to clarify, is almost 2 weeks ago, UMass Memorial has committed to an emergency room facility in the Neshoba Valley. That is a positive step in one of the major challenges, or one of the obstacles to getting this back up, is we need a qualified operator. So that is good news that UMass Memorial has publicly stepped up and committed to that. The challenge before us is their preference would be the Neshoba Valley Medical Center site in Ayer. And if you've noticed in the press release that was issued, but they've not been able to secure that site to date from Apollo. Apollo Management is the owner of the site. They are now looking to Plan B to look to other potential sites because have not been able to secure the optimal site. I want the board to know I have expressed my concerns to the state, specifically to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, to UMass Memorial, who we're very appreciative that are stepping up, to Congresswoman Trahan, Senator Eldridge, that the Neshoba Valley Medical Center site in Ayer is the optimal site. And there's one last piece we need to do, in my opinion, before we start getting on to Plan B. And the fire chiefs have also expressed the same position, that that's the optimal site. The last piece is we need to get control of the site. The site is optimal. It's been centrally located in the region for the last 60 years. It's a 32-acre site that currently has a medical building in it, that currently still has some doctors and specialists that is important, and they're hanging on, waiting, for this to happen. The nursing home is also on that campus. It has the helicopter pad. It has the public water and sewer capacity, which I'd argue is very difficult to find in this region. It is part of the phased-in approach we've been advocating for, is that we do the emergency room first and then begin to build back the other services up there. The site has the opportunity for further expansion. It has existing infrastructure that's there, and less than 5 months ago, the emergency room was operational. Why reinvent the wheel? It's zoned medical, which is also a key factor to any site. And again, that, I believe, has been the intention and the expectation of the people of this region all along, is that we would begin to restore healthcare services there. We now have the operator, UMass Memorial. We know the optimal site. We just need control of the site, and we really need the leadership and resources of the state to find a pathway to make this happen. And that's still the sticking point. And what I'm saying to you, I have said directly to the state, is that last piece. It's imperative, and it is not only the optimal site, but also it is a key. If you look at all of the determinants of healthcare, also, the site has been vacant for 5 months. We lost 650 jobs. That's where it needs to go. Where we're working now is to try to make this happen. But we really need the state. We have UMass. We need the state's help on this, and that's the sticking point where we're at right now. So that's sort of my update. I think it's wonderful that UMass Memorial is stepping forward. I think we need them. And the other thing is, we're not privy to all the information because of non-disclosure agreements and with Apollo and so forth. But I'm very concerned that because very concerned that that really needs to be the site. And you talk to anybody in the region, Representative Scarsdale believes that, Senator Eldridge, it's not just an air, yes, it's in air, and that is an important piece, but that's where it's been for over 60 years. That's where it needs to go. So we're almost there. We continue to apply direct pressure to the state. We just want the same consideration that was given to the other systems to try to make this happen. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't have all of the specifics, and that's the frustrating part on that. We understand that Apollo does want to be at the table. We have to take them at that word, does want to solve this. So that's sort of my update at this point. I think, respectfully, I think we need to continue two themes. I think one theme is to really stress the importance of UMass Memorial, and we want to work with them because we need the operator. But also, I don't think all of the stones have been turned over yet to abandon. And I'm not saying it's being abandoned, but I'm concerned that they have not been able to secure that is the optimal site, and they're looking to Plan B, which I can, if I'm UMass Memorial, I can understand that if you've hit a wall, but I'm imploring, the state to make this final piece happen, and that's been conveyed to all of the people that I've mentioned.
Yes.
So instead of saying the state, could we just say the governor? Instead of saying we need the state to step in, we need Governor Healy to step in. We know from over the summer that there is buku money available to help with this situation. And she indicated and certainly helped other hospitals and indicated she'd be happy to do it for us. Again, crickets. For whatever reason, she don't like talking to us. And I mean this region. So do we need to go back to the State House and get loud again? Because there's something wrong here. Seriously, there's something wrong here. I understand that there will be some things that he's not going to be privy to. Maybe there's a hush-hush secret squirrel meeting going on right now. I don't know. But I'm getting a little tired of even those secret squirrel meetings. And I think it's high time that we get loud again. Because there's something wrong with this picture. Something seriously wrong with this picture. And the buck stops with her. She's in the top leadership position. The buck stops with her. So where is she? We've invited her. She showed up. We know she knows where Ayer is because she showed up prior to the election, snuck in with 20 million cars, which I don't know how she can call that sneaking in, but she snuck in, wouldn't talk to us. It's time. It's time. And if we've got to go back to the State House and stand there and get loud and in front of the press to get her to at least come out and say, hey, Janice, hush, I'm in a secret squirrel meeting about this right now, then I can say, well, thank you very much. I think that's what we're at, because this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. We all know I get pretty hot about this.
Okay.
I know we had talked about bringing Apollo to the table and trying to speak to whoever represents them. Is that something we can explore again or push again? What I look at with this is they're receiving zero income from that property, right?
Correct.
Of which they must still be paying taxes.
500,000 estimated a year is the tax. It's assessed at just over 18 million, so the tax on that is just over 500,000. So they are footing that bill plus any insurance and minimal operating costs. I mean, the lights are still on and what have you.
They're never going to get that zoned non-medical for anything else.
No, because the town won't even do it.
Correct.
Right.
So you need 2/3
Yep.
approval at town meeting, which will never happen. So what I'm trying to just figure out from their standpoint, and, you bring it starts with the governor. I'm just trying to go, okay, you covered that very well, the anger at the governor, and I echoed that. But trying to look at what are they thinking?
I think one of the issues also is not just, it's the state of the facility and the estimated cost of repairs to get it up to code. At least that was brought up at the meeting that the governor was at. The
Right.
state has offered financial incentives to whoever wants to bid on
But
it.
even just the site plan, like
Hmm.
Robert had said, it has the sewer there, it has the water there. I mean, I understand there could be, there's costs to renovate and get it up to code or, whatever they have to do to bring it to, modern standards, whatever they're looking for. But it's really gonna cost that much more doing that than just finding a new site. I'm not asking you.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you don't, I'm putting it out to the universe. I guess I just need to understand, from their standpoint,
Hmm.
they're going to own this property forever and pay all this money, and what are they gonna do, sell it? Okay, well, I mean, they're still stuck in that situation because it's not gonna be a change to zoning.
That has been communicated. It's an excellent point. I mean, the zoning is not going to change, so it limits it. They have certain responsibilities on the minimum operation of that facility. We know it's $500,000 a year on the taxes vacant. And I think we're at a point that we are so close. I mean, UMass has stepped forward. We know that that is also their preferred site, but they haven't been able to, and let's cut to the chase, if they haven't been able to move on that, it has to come down to the issue of funding. But UMass Memorial has put its funding, whatever that is, I mean, obviously something. The town, I mean, that would be for further discussion by the select board, but there are things that the town, within reason, could do, within reason. But the big piece is who has the capacity is the state, and you're correct, and you were at that meeting. We were told all along, if you get an operator, we'll give you this, you'll have the same consideration as the other systems. And if you look at the other systems, there was approximately $70 million put into the other systems, and if you break it apart.
Was it 70 or 700? There was 700 million for all of them.
I'd have 70,
Yeah,
but
divide
it's,
the first.
For all 6
Yeah.
facilities?
Yeah.
but that's over 10 million. So what I'm getting at is, I think we're very close, but the state needs to do its part because they have the capacity to do that part. I mean, we all know that we don't have the financial resources, but we can definitely be, at the table. I'm fundamentally concerned of two things. One is there's potentially a short window here if a site B is found. And then we're stuck, and I said this to Congresswoman Trahan last week and to Senator Eldridge and to the state. I said, if that happens, where's the federal government and the state going to be when we're stuck with the 32-acre empty building up there? I mean, it's a huge blow not only to Ayer, to the region. So I think, and Selectman Livingston, I believe, is correct. I think we need to, in a very firm and vocal sense, stress, look, we've got the operator, that's great, UMass Memorial. How do we make this last piece happen? And others agree. I mean, I've heard from Groton and others are willing. I mean, that's a good idea. I don't know if how Apollo would talk, to the town, but you can ask.
Yeah, 'cause it seems like that's the sticking point from what I understand, is
Yeah.
trying to work with them.
Yeah.
Not a lot of work is being done, obviously, on the state side. But if that's the sticking point, let's get it unstuck,
Exactly. It just, there's something wrong here. And there's been
Mhm.
something wrong in Denmark for months now.
Agreed.
And for whatever reason, she just, she drives to Chumford to meet a beaver. But she can't come here.
Could I add some notes?
Yeah.
Another avenue we should make sure we're communicating on is addressing Apollo specifically, because if they are somewhat a part of the sticking point is Senators Markey and Warren. In fact, I was just checking, they did a press release back in August of 2024 going after, I'll use the word pushing Apollo Global Management on their role in the bankruptcy and everything. So if we can make sure that we communicate with them, and I think Representative Scarsdale has been able to talk to Senator Warren and Markey. I'm not sure about that, but I think if we can get Senators Markey and Warren in on the loop to push from down on Apollo, because they're eventually going to be bringing them up to it on a committee there.
Well, we don't know why Apollo's, struggling either,
Or I didn't catch
I
that.
said, we don't know why Apollo is I use easy numbers. I mean, if they want $10 and they're only being offered $5, is that the problem? And that's where the governor would need to step in.
Yes, but I'm just thinking if we can have Warren and Markey in the loop so they can push not only Apollo, but the governor also to get this resolved. So, because what I'm hearing is there's two pieces to it, is that we need to get from Governor Healy just support to money to help UMass Lowell to use this site. And then we need to get Apollo's to get out of the picture somehow. And I think because Apollo being nationwide and already on Warren's and Markey's radar, they might be able to help. So just I don't know if we would send them a letter or communicate with them also. But I think they would be very helpful from the Apollo Capital Management.
Thanks for calling everybody. Right? Get the loudspeaker, get the,
I just want to make an amendment to my statement. It was actually $489 million the state offered for the 6 facilities. It was originally $700 million.
So 489, and if you divide that
Over
by
3 years.
6, and
wasn't there like $9 billion in the surplus? So there's money.
There's money.
There's money.
so what I think, in the interest of time, so in next steps, and we'll keep, obviously, purpose of the update. So a couple things in next steps. I think that the board, and I could put this together, should send a formal letter stressing the welcomed news of UMass Memorial. This is great, but really stressing the importance of this site. That's the first thing. In other words, we're almost there, and Plan B is not in anybody's interest. Plan B is happening only because there's some logjam on A, right? And of course, we get that. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is, and I'll get the contacts, I think respectfully, I think each of the board members should contact Congresswoman Trahan, who I've talked to, and she is supportive, but we need to channel this support into action. I think that this is the largest issue facing the region right now. Perhaps, one of the things is I've asked Senator Eldridge to put together a letter from the entire delegation about the importance of the site, similar thing. but do we look to have them come here in some context to have a discussion? You know, the board had that meeting upstairs. I think that was very effective. I'm just saying that we need to, sooner than later, make this happen. And I will see where Apollo stands on potentially meeting with the town. So, but I think there's a huge opportunity here, and we remain committed. The last piece on the update, just briefly on the EMS funding piece, and I know that Chief Johnston is here. We also, in addition to the focus on securing the site, the other ongoing piece is with the EMS funding, as the board is aware, and we did put the letter is on the website, is that we're looking at a request of approximately $9 million over the next 2 fiscal years to support the EMS system. The chiefs did, some of the chiefs, Chief Johnson was one of them, met with the Senate chair of the Appropriations Committee recently, positive meeting, and the legislative delegation was meeting today with the Secretary of Administration and Finance. I don't have an update yet on that, but the other key pieces, regardless of what happens, there's still this period of time. If you go by the press release, UMass Memorial anticipates the earliest would be the fall of 2026. I would argue it could be a little bit sooner if we went with this site, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But we still have to get through this hump, and we're going to need support from the state and or federal sources. So we'll keep you updated on that. And just through the chair, just very quickly, Chief, anything you wanted to add on the EMS front?
Yeah, we just have that, the next meeting is next week with admin and finance with there's three chiefs, myself, Chief Sidlow, and Chief McCurdy from Littleton. So we're just moving forward, and that sum of money is distributed throughout the 13 communities that were affected by the hospital closure. It certainly can be defined as it goes through those committees, but the ask is there, and there's data to back it up, and we'll see how that moves forward as to if anything comes of it. But yeah, looking forward to that process, as we move forward.
More to come.
Yep. Yes.
So I can't remember if it was last meeting or the meeting before that, I had requested that maybe we should send another letter to the governor. And just think we should send another letter to the governor.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in light of this, I think the main thing.
I think we need to get it out sooner rather than later. Because we need to put as much pressure on her. And I think that, if we can somehow contact the other towns, say, hey, send her a letter too. And then the public, to get a hold of her. Because at this point, she at least should have said, I'm aware of what's going on and I'll get back to you. And I don't think she's said that. So since she has not said that, that tells me she's not aware and not focused on it.
So I'll use, Mr. Chair, we'll use the same format. I'll put together something, get each of your input. We'll do it quickly, get that out. I'm sure that the other towns, as they did before with your other document, will adopt that. And
Right.
I think we need to start this process.
Yes, please.
Okay. Unless there's any questions from the board, that concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, new business and select board member questions. There was nothing. Anything? No? Okay. And then approval of meeting minutes for January 21st, 2025. I didn't have any changes. You guys? Okay, take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 21st, 2025.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair says aye.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I'd like to make a motion that the select board move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30 Alpha, Section 21 Alpha, Exemption Number 2, Non-Union Personnel, Ratification of Deputy Police Chief Contract, and that the select board not go back into open session, but to adjourn from executive session.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.